Hi folks, this is Karim Rao from IT Visualizer channel. Today we'll continue our lab Marvel and DC United. We have been discussing the previous video and introduction about the lab. Okay, here is like a brief of what we have been discussed before. We have been this lab we will discuss the Microsoft Azure Cloud solution. Okay, we have a storyline concerning this lab. We have a storyline that we have been discussed before in the previous video, and we have an introduction to our lab scenario, and we have a small brief or a quick view on the PowerShell scripts and login scripts that we will use to create both domains. We will have two domains created on the Azure Cloud, one for the Marvel domain and one for the DC Comics domain, and we will create in both domains two domain controllers, and we will use PowerShell scripts to create users and groups and computers and security groups objects using PowerShell scripts. Okay, and I have shown you all the last time or the previous video these Excel or these PowerShell scripts, and we have an Excel sheet or text files that contains all of the Marvel and DC Comics characters universe. So all of our users, groups and group members are created from both Marvel and DC characters universe. Okay, so this lab we will begin discussing or begin diving more in the Microsoft Azure Cloud solution. So we need to first to know what is cloud computing. First of all, I need to show you all a small PDF. This book is for Learn Azure for Beginners. Okay, this is for the author Henry Strom. Okay, we will take a little bit or a little introduction from his book about what is cloud computing. The popular trend today, technology-driven world as cloud computing, is referred to as storing and accessing data over the internet rather than your computer hard drive. This is basically what cloud computing means. This means that you don't access the data from either your computer or a dedicated computer network. Anyway, this means in brief that the cloud computing means to access your data on a computer that is on the internet or on the cloud, if we can say this. Okay, not on your hard disk or local hard disk computer. Okay, so cloud computing data is stored at a remote place and it is synchronized with other web information. This is briefly what cloud computing means. On-premise example of cloud computing is Office 365, which allows users to store, access, edit their MS Office documents online or in a browser without installing the actual program on their device. This is basically what is cloud computing. There is an architecture or there is a design for the cloud computing. The architecture of cloud computing comprises of the following components: front-end device, back-end device. I can show you all a little bit of a diagram what this means. Here we can see that this is my laptop. Okay, and I have a browser, or I am accessing the internet. So I type the Microsoft Azure portal website. Okay, this is the website, or this is the Azure Cloud System. I access it through the internet. I have a username and a password on this Azure Cloud System, and then after that I will begin creating my virtual machines or my domains through choosing one of Microsoft famous data centers. Okay, so Microsoft has a lot of data centers or cloud Azure data centers, okay, all over the world. There is some in US, some in the Middle East, some in Africa, some in China, some in the most continents. So basically, when you access the portal of Microsoft and begin creating your first domain or your first virtual network, you will choose one of them or one of these regions or Microsoft data center regions to create your virtual networks and your virtual machines. So here we can have a little bit of a look. This is the data center. Okay, and after you choose the data center, so by steps, you first log into your laptop and then access the Microsoft Azure portal system or cloud, and then you should have a username and a password to access this portal, and then you choose one of the regions or the Microsoft data center regions to create your virtual machines and domain, and then we will create our first, or we create two forests, okay, and then two domains. We will have two domains, one for the Marvel domain and one for the DC Comics domain. Here we can have a little bit of a look. This triangle, it is the domain, okay, and then we will have a workstation, and then we will have two domain controllers, okay, and then this red one, this is the virtual network. This is the network that all of these devices will talk to. For example, we will have a virtual network for our Marvel domain, for example. So here we will have a virtual network, for example, that its range is 192.168.1.0. This is the Marvel virtual network range, and this red circle or this red rectangle, this is for the virtual network. This network contains all of our virtual machines for the Marvel domain. It is a workstation and two domain controllers as the scenario implements and implies, and then we will have a virtual gateway. So we will have a virtual gateway, and then this is domain controller. We have two domain controllers, then we have a workstation to test our domain and different setting, okay, and this rectangle, it is the domain itself. It resembles, or it is resembled, or it is diagrammed in most of the it is diagrammed as a rectangle, or sorry, as I think it's not rectangle, it is this is pyramid, okay, it is resembled as a pyramid, okay. Anyway, this is the domain, and this is the workstation, and this is the domain controller, and the red thing is the virtual network, and then we have a gateway, okay, and this circle, this is the Azure virtual environment, okay. So we have two domains, okay. The same will apply to the DC Comics. This will be the Marvel, and this will be the DC Comics. Anyway, all of these virtual networks and domains and the data center, all of these in one rectangle resembles something called backend, okay. This is called backend, okay, and your laptop and the Microsoft Azure portal or a Microsoft website is called front end. So okay, so this is the front end, this is the end, or this is the part of the network that is exposed to the client. So you have your laptop, and this your Azure portal accessing. This is called the front end, and then the back end, or in the background, you will have all of the data centers and your virtual machines. Data centers are virtual machines and domain controllers and everything. So this is the front end, and all of these are the back end. So anyway, this is a brief what is the front end and back end. And then after having those, we have certain cloud-based delivery. We will show you that in a moment. And then the network, front end or front end devices. These are basically the devices that are used by clients to access the data or program using the browser or a specific application. This exactly what we have saying. This is your laptop, and this is the program that we are accessing, or this is the web portal that we are accessing. So this is the front end. And as for the back end, these are the various computers, servers, virtual machines that combine to become a back end platform. So this is the front end platform, and this is the back end platform. This is the front end platform, and all of these are the back end platform, okay. So here we have two things, or the architecture of the cloud computing is front end and back end, and then we have something called cloud based delivery. Here is some types of cloud computing, or there is three types of cloud computing. First of all, we have the storage options, or cloud is in three forms: public, private, and hybrid. Public, a service provider makes the cloud available to the general public, which is termed as public cloud. These clouds are accessed through internet by users. They are open to public, and their infrastructure is owned and operated by service providers such as Google and Microsoft. This means that these are servers that are accessed, or it is available for the public or for all the internet users to access, okay. something like Google and Microsoft websites, this are called public cloud. So Google is considered as a public cloud and Microsoft is considered as a public cloud. Their websites, or there is some types of their servers, are available to the public on the internet or on the cloud, so these are called public cloud. Okay, private clouds are the clouds that are dedicated to particular organization. That particular organization can use the cloud for storing the company data, hosting businesses. The data stored on private could not be shared with other organizations. The cloud is managed either by the organization itself or by a third party. This is another type of clouding. You have certain storage or certain servers available only for the organization or for the employees for the organization. For example, if you for example, you are Pepsi Cola, something like a company of Pepsi, and you need to have your domain and all of your infrastructure on the cloud. So you go to Microsoft and rent one of their servers and make your domain and all of your IT infrastructure in there or on Microsoft servers. But the only one that are permission or have the permission to access the Pepsi Cola domain and all of its infrastructure is only the Pepsi Cola employees. So this is not available for the public or for the internet users, someone like myself or anyone. This is only available for the organization's employee and the organization IT. Okay, so this is called private clouds. And the last one, it is the hybrid cloud, which is one or two more clouds bound together to offer advantages of both private and public clouds. They are termed hybrid clouds. Organizations can use private cloud for sensitive data, while public clouds are for non-sensitive application. For example, if you have the same example, Pepsi Cola have a private cloud or a private domain. It's only available, it's only used by the Pepsi Cola employees, but it has another server that is acting as a web server. So this web server is available for the normal users or for the public users to access it. So the web server, it is considered a public cloud, and as for the Pepsi Cola domain, it is considered a private cloud. Okay, so Pepsi Cola can use both. So the example can use a private cloud to put their sensitive data on it and their domain and everything, and they can make another server and put their websites and their needed to access information for the public, and this can be considered as a public cloud. So we have private, public, and hybrid. Okay, so here we can see that benefits of using the cloud. Service offers scalability, allocation and deallocation of resources dynamically as per demand. Here, for example, we can see for this diagram that, for example, here you have a lot of data centers that you can create your domains and virtual networks and your data, store your data on it. For example, if one of these data centers are down, so you don't need to worry because there is redundant data centers. So this data center is completely synced with another region, or this, for example, if you have data center in US, okay, and there is a problem with this region or this servers in the US, okay, you will not lose your data because there is another region or another data center in another place that your data is replicated to it. Okay, so this is for the protection of the data. And for example, if you need for example to decommission a server, or you need one of your servers that you don't need it, so this is available. You can tell Microsoft, I don't need a specific server, okay, so it can decommission for it or reallocate it or do anything you need as per demand. So what does this mean? For example, if you are working in a traditional data center and you have, for example, 5 or 6 servers, okay, and your operation indeed needs these 5 or 6 servers, but by the time your operation is less or your activity is not longer need 5 or 6 servers. So in a physical or in a traditional data center, you will not be able to get rid of one of these servers because they are already purchased, okay, and they are in operation, okay. So this is a cost, okay. But as for Microsoft, you rent your server and your operation as per hour. So for example, if you need to rent a server for for example 1 month or 2 months, you can do this, and then after that you can release the contract, or you can tell Microsoft I don't need this server anymore. So you can rent it by month or by hour. Okay, so this is very efficient, cost efficient, because that you will use data as per demand, or as per hour or month. Okay, this is not the same when you are working with the traditional data center. For using a traditional data center, you need to have or purchase, for example, 5 or 6 servers, and then by the time passed, for example, if your activity is not longer much as before, you can't, for example, decommission one of them, or you cannot for example, you can sell them, but this will be not cost efficient, and you will not gain much of it. Okay, and it's not cost efficient. Okay, so this is the means, but what we mean by allocation and deallocation of resources dynamically as per demand. It saves costs by reducing capital infrastructure. As I said before, you are renting from Microsoft all of what you need, okay, as per hour and per month. And for example, take into consideration that when you are creating a data center, you need not only computers, servers, cables, and racks. You need power. You need UPSs for data, for power redundancy, and a lot of things. So this will reduce capital infrastructure, okay, because you are renting now. All of this will be on Microsoft. You are only renting a part of their server, and it is per hour or per month, and then you can after a good let's say good planning, you can reduce your cost very efficiently, on the opposite when you are creating a normal data center or a physical data center. So this saves capital infrastructure. It allows users to access the application independent of their location and hardware configuration. Also, this is very good point. For example, now the user can access different applications. Okay, some of them maybe are more something like graphic design programs, or applications that use much computing power, like processor or RAM. All of this can be done with using a normal laptop. For example, imagine that you have a normal laptop with not much computing capabilities. You have not much RAM and not much power. So for example, you have a laptop with not much power and not much power as RAM and processor and hard disk, and you need to. So now I said before, we will have a laptop, okay, with low hardware specs. Okay, you can access, for example, a server on the cloud or on the internet that has much more hardware capabilities. So you can, for example, use Adobe Premiere or Adobe InDesign and design your work and make your video, for example, streaming or video editing. All of this will be done not on your laptop with the low hardware requirement, but it will be done on a high-end hardware server, and this can be done without the need for you to have already a hardware, a very good hardware or a very high hardware. You just need to have a laptop and access to the internet, and then you will access your server through this laptop, and then all of the applications or all of the things that you need will be on this server, and then you can do all of your work on this server. And of course, this server will be of much higher capabilities, so you can do everything you need from video editing, or for applications that need much more hardware specs. You can use it on the server. And the good thing that you don't need to have your laptop, or you don't need to purchase a laptop with high capabilities or hardware capabilities to do your work. Now you need only to have a normal or a low standard PC or laptop. Just you need an internet connection, and then to access your server to do your work. It simplifies the network and lets the client access the application without buying a license for an individual. And also, this is another thing. Here you have one server that will have one license. Okay, for example, if you are working for an office, for example, and you have Office installed on one server, and all of your users will access this server that contains Office to do their work, this will be much less costly, because every Office that you install on every PC or laptop, it needs a license. Of course, this type of accessing, for example, if I have an Office 365, for example, it would be less costly, but it also have another cost. But this is another way to lessen your cost. Okay, this is because you will work from another or from one PC that will have only one license. For example, in the Office case, for Office 365, you will have only one server and all of your clients who are working on it. So this server, technically, it will have only one license. But if you have, if you need to install Office on every user PC, so you need to have a license for Office for every user that you install this Office on his PC. Okay. Storing cloud data is more reliable. Okay, of course, I said before, storing data on, for example, here, if you have your data on one data center and it was down, don't be worried, because we will have another backup, and there is syncing between regions or between data centers, so you don't need to bother yourself with the losing of your data. Okay, so this is it, the benefits of the cloud. And then we have some types of cloud, how these cloud services are categorized. For example, we have something called S for software, something called P for platform, and something called I for infrastructure. Okay, I have another diagram I can show you all. This is another way for explaining the cloud. For example, here, this is the traditional data center. You have your cables, you have your hard disks, you have your servers, and then you have a virtualization. For example, if you have Hyper-V or you have vSphere, and then you, when installing Hyper-V or vSphere, then you install operating system or create a virtual machine and you install operating system on it. And then you have, for example, applications, runtimes, and then, for example, if you are working with a database, so you have some data, and then if you are working, for example, with web things, you have your application at the end. So all of this are in on-premises, which mean that you need to purchase cables, you need to purchase hard disks, you need to purchase servers, you need to have a license for the Hyper-V or number of Hyper-Vs, you need to have an operating system installed, you need to have maintenance for the application. If you have, for example, database or something, you need to administer the database and do maintenance for it, and the application, if there is something, all of this will be done by the IT and on the premises. Okay, so all of these are the responsible of the IT, and you manage all of this. Okay, either by yourself or by making contracts or maintenance contracts, but you are the one who is responsible for managing all of this, and all of this are on the premises or will be in your data center. Okay, so this is a type, or this is the on-premises type of using your data center. Then comes another thing which is called infrastructure. Microsoft will offer you part of its it will rent for you a part of its servers or part of its data center, so it will provide you with the networking, the storage, and the servers and the virtualization. So all of this you will not have it on your data center, or it will not be in your physical location. Microsoft will do the cabling for you, will do the storage, and will do the servers and the virtualization in their data centers. You are only given the access to their servers and storage through the internet. And then the operating system and the middleware and the runtime and the data, the applications that you need on these servers that Microsoft will rent for you, you are responsible for doing them. For example, something like, let me show you, we have here an example of, it's called IaaS, it's infrastructure as a service. So here we can see, for example, something like something like Amazon S3. For example, here, let me have a little bit of a look. For example, here, if you have something like you rent a server or a space, for example, you rent a server from Microsoft and you need to install or to make a domain or make something. So here you will install the operating system on the server, and then we'll begin making Active Directory, and then so and then install. So only Microsoft will provide you with the network and the hard disks and the physical servers, and will give you the virtualization, which will be the Azure platform. And then after that, you are responsible for creating or for installing your operating system, creating your domains, and doing everything on your own. Even installing application, if you have, for example, web applications, or you have applications that you need users to access from outside, maybe HR application, finance application, anything. Okay, so this is your responsibility. So this is called infrastructure cloud. So Microsoft offers you the cloud as an infrastructure. It will only provide you with the physical infrastructure, and they will rent it through their data center. So they are offering you to rent a part of their infrastructure on the cloud, and then they will give you the access to their infrastructure from through the internet, through the Microsoft Azure, and then you will begin playing with these servers. You can install operating system and do everything, and this is all your responsibility. So you are the one responsible for managing the software. So the operating system, you are the one who managed, or the one responsible for updating the operating system. You are the one who is responsible for updating the application. You are the one responsible for any troubleshooting concerning these 4 layers. You are responsible for it. So Microsoft here is offering you its service as an infrastructure. And then we have another kind which is called platform structure. So Microsoft is offering you network, storage, servers, virtualization, operating system. It will install the operating system for you, the middleware, or the some application that will install for you, the runtime. Okay, it only gives you the manage of 2 things, the data and the applications. So this is called platform. It offers you the cloud as a platform. So what is as example of a platform? I can show you all here from this. As a platform, Microsoft Azure. Okay, so here as an example of let me show you here as an example. So here Microsoft, if we go to the Microsoft Azure portal, you can see that it's offering you Microsoft Azure as a platform. You can see that it's like an interface. This interface contains a lot of tools that you can use to create or do virtual machines. For example, we can see this example as a company. For example, if I am Pepsi Cola, for example, and I need to have my servers, or need to do my domain and everything through the through renting some part of Microsoft. So I'm doing this as an application or as an infrastructure. As for this, they are saying this could be like Microsoft Azure, but let me do another example. For example, here here we can say this as a platform. For example, if you need to have a SQL server, so let's say this as a platform. So for example, here this one we have told you before. For example, Pepsi Cola needs to make a domain or something, so it will call Microsoft and it will rent a part of their server. Microsoft will give them the 4 parts first, and then Pepsi Cola will install their operating system, for example Windows Server 2019, and then will begin creating the domain and everything they need. So this is the Pepsi Cola. As for the platform, for example, if you need to have a server that will run SQL database, so Microsoft, you only need to have, or you need only to have an application that will use a SQL database. So you don't bother yourself. You only need a database, and you need a part of the hard disk to install your application that will use this database. So Microsoft will provide you with everything except for the data. So you will install the SQL, and then you will install the application that will run on this SQL. So Microsoft will be responsible for providing you with the networking, cabling, storage, hard disks, servers, the virtualization, which will be Microsoft Azure, and then you will have operating system. It will install operating system for you, so it will provide you with a virtual machine that will have, for example, Windows 2019 on it, server, and it will provide you, for example, with the NetFrame and the accompany or some applications. It will only leave you to install or to manage 2 things. It will let you install the SQL database, for example, as I said before in this example. For example, if you have a financial application that needs to run on SQL, so you go to Microsoft and tell them, please, I need to rent your servers as a platform. Okay, so Microsoft will give you everything, will give you the storage, the servers, even the operating system and everything, and will leave you for 2 things that you will do. You will install your SQL database by yourself, and then you will install the application of the finance that will use this database, and you are responsible for updating these applications and for managing this SQL database. So this is another type of cloud. The first one is the infrastructure, and the other one is the platform, and the last thing is the software. This is a very good example. This is all of it, or all of these layers will be managed by Microsoft, and a very good example of it is Office 365. Office 365, it is an cloud service that Microsoft provides you. You need only it makes you it provides the networking, the storage, the servers, the virtualization, the operating system, and even the application. It installs Office 2016 or whatsoever on their servers, and it also provides you with emails. So this is everything. It will give you all of these things. It will provide for you. You only need to pay a subscription or to pay a fee to use it. A very good example of it is Office 365. So let's do it from the beginning. Infrastructure, we can resemble it as Pepsi Cola example. As I told before, Pepsi Cola needs to make a domain, so it will rent from Microsoft the networking, the storage, the server, the virtualization, which is Azure, and then it will begin doing their domain by installing the Windows Server 2019 and then creating the Active Directory, and so on. So this is the Pepsi Cola as an infrastructure cloud model. The platform model, for example, if you need to install a financial application and it is working on SQL, so you don't bother yourself with the operating system or anything. You just need to have a server that is up and running, and you need to have only two things that you should be of control: to have a part of the hard disk to install SQL database, and to have the application of the finance that will use this database. This is the finance application. So this is another example as using as a platform. And the last one is the Office 365 example. Microsoft provides everything for you, so you will not install the operating system, you will not install the Office, you will not install the applications, you will not install anything. You just rent the whole service from Microsoft, like the Office 365 example. This is a very good example. Okay, so here we have our this is our model. Okay, these are the models for the clouding. So as I said before, we have this is all the types of the cloud and everything. So now we can I want to show you also something here. Here we can see that when you access the Microsoft Azure portal, you will be asked to make your virtual machines and servers on a data center, or a region or a place where this data center resides. For example, in the US, this is the region of US. You need to choose a data center in the region of US. So we will choose a data center in the region of US, and then after choosing this region, it will redirect us, or it will take us to a server. Okay, in this server, it is consisting of a lot of things. This server, it's not only we will work only with one server, but actually are working with a lot of servers. So when you are creating your virtual machine or your virtual network, you will not create it on only one server, but we are combined using all of these servers. So all of these servers are consisting of components. For example, here we have the processor resource, the network card resource, the hard disk resource, the database resource, the RAM resource, the configuration, the virtual machine. So after going to this region, and then you will be asked to create your virtual machine or your virtual network, you need to choose from these resources. For example, you need to choose, for example, some amount of the processor, and some amount of the RAM, and some amount of the network cards, and then some amount of the hard disk, and then some amount of the virtual machines and configuration. So you choose all of them, and at the end they will create your virtual server. So basically in the Microsoft Azure cloud, it works with resources. Okay, resources. So when you create a virtual machine, you need to choose from the different resources and combine them, so you can have at the end a virtual server and a virtual network. So if we break, or the unit that, or the term that will Microsoft Azure use when you are working with it, you will work with the resource. Okay, so you need the first thing after choosing your data center that you will create your virtual network and virtual servers on it, you need to choose choose what type of resources that you will combine to create these virtual machines and virtual network. Okay, so we will work with the term of resources. So the first thing that we'll do when we access our region or data center, we will begin creating a group of resources. Okay, we will make a resource group, and then we will combine our different resources, and then after combining them we will begin creating our virtual server and virtual network. So this is the basic thing that we will do when we are working with Microsoft Azure platform. So let's, without further hesitation, we will go and see how we can begin working with the Microsoft Azure. First of all, you need to have a free account on Microsoft, or you need to have a username and a password on Azure cloud platform. So I will show you all how this can be done. So here we will search the internet for Microsoft Azure free trial, then create your free Azure account, and then we'll make start for free. And then we will sign in. We need to have an Outlook account or a Hotmail account, but it is also not Outlook, it's not Hotmail anymore, it is Outlook.com. So you need to have an account on Outlook.com. So I have already created one for me. It is for free, so we can create an account on Outlook.com for free. So after providing the Microsoft Outlook account, you will log in with it, and then it will begin asking you for some information to create your Microsoft Azure account. So you need to have a Microsoft Outlook account to be able to create your free Azure account, free Microsoft Azure account. So here it will ask you about the region, and then will ask you about your name, first name and last name, and your email address. Then you need to provide your phone. Okay. Then the next thing, you need to have a credit card, because it will take only $1 from you. Okay, it's only as a precaution, because it needs to verify that you are the one, or you are a real person. So it needs to have a credit card, so just to confirm with Microsoft that you are not a bot, or it can verify your identity. So it needs a credit card to verify your identity. So here I have given him my phone, but after giving him my phone, he will ask me if I have a credit card. First of all, after providing your phone, it will send you a verification code. Okay, so I tell him, giving him my number, and then it will send me a code, and on my cell phone. And after I got this code and put it in the verification box or something, in the verification field, it will ask for a credit card. But anyway, just a moment. Now you will see something like a message saying that it has already sent me a code. You have delivered a code to your phone. So here I am typing the code. And then it will ask for a credit card. Actually, this part I will just show you all the fields, but I will pass it quickly because it's my credit card anyway. So here I will pass all of this. Okay, I put the number and everything, and then at the end we will accept the agreement, and then we tell him sign up, and after that you will be redirected to the Microsoft Azure portal. So this, guys, I have already recorded it in 1st of October 2019. So if there is any changes in the Azure interface or added new services, you need to check, because this has been done last year, or it's about 6 or 7 months now, and there is a lot of updates concerning the Azure, adding more services and more updates or more changes in their interface. Okay, so anyway, now we're accessing our Microsoft Azure portal. So the first thing we need to know, or need to take notice here, that you can see that I need to show you all something here, because I need to give you another look. Here we can see Microsoft is telling you that now we have signed in for a free Microsoft Azure account. So what this free account gives you, it will give you 12 months of free products. Okay, so get free access to popular products like virtual machines and storage and database in your first 30 days. Okay, so to give you 1 month for free and for 12 months after you upgrade your account. So it is basically giving you 1 month for free, 1 month for free to use Microsoft or to use Microsoft servers to create virtual machines and to use their storage and databases. Okay, and it gives you about $200 as credit to use in this month. So within a month you will have access, or you have free access to create virtual machines, hard disks and databases. Okay, with the 200 credit. What I mean by this, every virtual machine, every hard disk, everything that you use on the Microsoft Azure, it will be charged for an amount of money. For example, if you create a virtual machine with some specs, for example, if you have a virtual machine with 1 GB of RAM, for example, and 1 virtual processor and 1 hard disk, all of this will be rented for you, for example, for 1 cent per hour. So this is how Azure works. You pay for everything you do. Okay, but Microsoft, by using this free Azure account, it gives you 1 month for free to use its virtual machines, storage and databases. Or for example, you have 1 month, but in this 1 month you are given $200 as a credit. Okay, $200 to use for 1 month. So with this $200 you can create virtual machines, you can create storages, you can create databases, but within the limit of $200. For example, if your limit is finished before 1 month, then it is finished. You will not be able to continue working. Or for example, if you passed 1 month and you still have credit, it will not be used. So you have two limitations to use the products of Microsoft within 1 month, okay, and with the limit of $200. Okay, so if you, for example, I have used my $200, but at the end of the month I have still $50 remaining. So after the end of 1 month, my $50 are not there anymore, it is not used. Okay, so this is how we will work with Microsoft Azure account. Okay, but anyway, $200 is more than enough. You can do a lot of things by this $200, and as I show you, but you need to take care that you need to always see your credit limit. If it's your credit limit is used, how much is used, and each thing or everything that you do on Azure, you need to take notice of how much price or how much you will be charged for doing this. Okay, so anyway, now we will access the portal. So here we'll go to the portal. I need to make sure that I have already 43 minutes. It's a little bit of more of time. I think maybe we'll use it for 1 hour. Anyway, so here now we are accessing our this is our first look in our Microsoft Azure interface. Here we can see that it's giving you a notification that you have 200 credit remaining. Every time you access the portal, Microsoft will give you a warning that you have how much is remaining from your credit. So this is very good because it alerts you to work cautiously, and it will give you an indication on how much is remaining from your credit. Okay, and here we can see that, as I said before, a main thing of Microsoft Azure platform is resources. So to do anything on the Microsoft Azure, we need first to create a resource group. Okay, like this one here, we will create a resource group. This circle is a resource group, and in this resource group we will begin taking, for example, 2 processors, a bunch of RAMs, a bunch of hard disk, and a bunch of cards, network cards, and then we'll combine them at the end through this resource group to create a virtual machine. So basically the first thing to do when you access the Microsoft Azure is to create a resource group. We will see that in a moment, but first of all you need to take notice of your credit and your cost. Okay, so this is the first thing that you need to take note. So here I'm just discovering the interface, so I can pass you all real quickly of it. Here we can see, but I will show you all because here this is a very good example on how you can serve the or begin discovering the interface of the Microsoft Azure. We can see that your credit expired in 31 days. Okay, and it will give you, this is a general idea of your cost, how much you used from the $200 and in which resources or in which things that you used this credit. For example, if you need or if you use $10 for creating a virtual machine, $10 for creating a hard disk. Anyway, this is something called cost and bill. Here you can see that this is your billing information. This is Karim Raouf, and this is online service, and this is an overview, all your payment methods, your billing address. This is all things related to the billing. For example, if I used my free Azure account moment, for example, if I have used it for 1 month and I need to still use it, so it will begin charging me everything I do on a daily basis. Oh, sorry, not on a daily basis. At the end of the month, it will begin sending you the bill, or it will begin charging it on your credit month by month. So here we can see that this is a lot of things here. Actually, I didn't discover much. Here, for example, the budget. If you need to make a budget for your 200 credit, if you need to have cost alerts, for example, if you need Microsoft to alert you when your credit card reaches a certain limit, this can be done through the cost alert, but still it's not there. Anyway, this is an overview of the cost. Here we can see that information about myself. My current bill, it will be ending, it begins of 1 of October, it will end 31 of October, 1 month. Okay, usage and quotas. Here we can see that you can make a quota. For example, you can make a quota for yourself, and if you need to make certain, for example, if you are limiting yourself, for example, to create a virtual machine for certain amount of dollars, it is by quota. You can make a quota for creating your resources. For example, I need only to create 1 virtual machine for a total money of $2 or $3. So this is cost analysis and usage and quotas. Okay, so this is basically here I am just seeing or discovering the interface. Anyway, this is not all of them, it's not that important, but it's my first time to access the Microsoft Azure platform, so I'm just discovering, and then I began reading and seeing videos about this. So first, here I will begin. The first thing is to create a resource group. I said before, this is very important. In this resource group, we will begin putting all of our hardware resources, and then we will collect them and begin creating a virtual machine. So here we will add the first resource group. So here we will name it, this is the first one, it will be for Marvel domain, so we name it Marvel or MSRT Marvel, okay, lab. And then you need here to take note about, here it's telling you this resource group you will create it on which data center region. So here we can see that it is suggesting for you US, Central US. Okay, here because I didn't know that this is a recommendation, so I choose the data center that is near for me. For example, I have the UEA or the United Arab of Emirates. This server is much closer to me than the US data center, but this was a problem because after choosing this region I was not allowed to have virtual machines created on the data center of UAE. This is not provided for me with my free Azure account. So you need to take care that the defaults, you can accept the defaults, don't use the region that is nearer to you, because sometimes you are not allowed to create virtual machines or your data center region as a limitation of Microsoft Azure account. And you will see this, you will see that I have already choose the UAE, and then when I try to create a virtual machine there is some problems begin to happen. Okay, so anyway, this is your subscription, it's a free trial, and this is the resource group. You will name it Microsoft, sorry, you will name it Marvel lab, and in this Marvel resource we will create our first domain controller, and then we will create our second domain controller. But this is the beginning, this is the first thing that we need to create, the resource group. So we need to choose from the recommended. So here, if you can go a little bit further, here you need to choose the recommended one for you. Okay, I didn't choose the recommended, I chose the data center that is near to me. Okay, didn't see this recommendation, so you need to choose from the recommendation. You have all of these are recommended, the US, or it's giving US Central as a recommendation, US East is as a recommendation. Anyway, so I have chosen the Middle East UAE because I am living in Egypt, so I thought that choosing this region will be logic. But when I chose it, my free Azure trial or free Azure account doesn't allow me to create virtual machines on the data center of Microsoft in the United Arab Emirates region. Okay, so here we tell him review and create. This is tags or something, it is not that important. So let him create and review. So now we have created our first resource group, and from this resource group we have to, before creating our virtual machine, we need to create our virtual network. We need to have a network that our domain and our Active Directory will be in. So our virtual network will be our network range. We need to decide our network range begins from where and ends where, and then we begin providing some information about our virtual network. So our virtual network will be 192.168.1.0, and then we will begin giving our servers from these ranges and our workstations. Okay, so we will go create resource. Now we have created our resource group, then we'll create our virtual network. Here our Marvel network will be 192.168.0.0/16. Why we are doing this? Why it's not 192.168.1.0/24? Because we will create more than one network. For example, our servers will take from the network 192.168.1.0. This is the servers network range and the workstations network range, and then we will create a gateway. We will assign another network range for it, which will be 192.168.2.0. This is a recommendation from Microsoft that the gateway should take from a range different than, or the gateway should take, a virtual gateway should take a range different from the servers and workstation range. Anyway, so we will begin creating our virtual network. See, now we give our virtual network a name, and then we say it's Marvel Virtual Net or Marvel VNet 01, and then we will give him the range 192.168.0.0/16. okay, this is our general network range. Okay, and then we will put it in the resource group that we have created earlier, and then we will give, this is the address space, and then the address range will be the subnet. Here we will name this subnet. Just a minute. I'm sorry guys, let's continue. Here I need to emphasize a little bit of thing here. Here we can see that something called address space. This address space, it is the number of networks that we can create. Okay, for example, here we can create a lot of networks using this address space. Okay, 192.168.0.0/16. this is our networks, or the number of networks that it is available for us. Okay, so this is the name, or this is the address space, and then in the address range we'll begin creating our first network, which will be in the range of 192.168.0.0, which will be 192.168.1. this is the first subnet in the address space. Okay, so just to make a little bit of a note, and then we will have another subnet which will be 192.168.2. this will be for the subnet for the gateway. So our address space is the number of network subnets available for us. Okay, and then we will begin creating our first subnet, which will be Marvel or the subnet that will be available for our servers and workstations, which will be 192.168.1.0/24. and we will leave everything of the options to be on the default, or we leave the default selections, because as I said before, every option that you choose or you work with in Azure will be for a cost. Okay, and then something called automation options. Here this is something like when you create, for example, you are using or you're creating your Active Directory, or you set up or you configure your Active Directory. At the end it gives you an option to export this configuration and this setup to a PowerShell script, so you can automate the process, so you don't need every time to choose the same options and do the same things. So it can, at the end of the setup and configuration, will give you a PowerShell script so you can use. The same here in Azure. Everything in Azure can be automated, so you can export the process of creating your virtual network with all of your setting. Everything can export it as a PowerShell script, or as .NET, or as a Ruby, or even as Johnson or JSON, I don't remember. But these are types of exporting or types of automation to automate the process of creating a virtual network by exporting it to different types of automation languages, for example like PowerShell, .NET, Ruby, CLI, and so you can tell him to download, to export, or to download this process of creating your virtual network to PowerShell, for example, language, for example. So this is I think Johnson or JSON. Okay, so here I was confused. I will create it back from the beginning. So this is the name of our virtual network, and this is our address space. From here we can define how much subnets we need. So here I'm telling him I need a lot of subnets. Here we have a lot of subnets from this address space. Then we attach it, or we create it in the resource group that we have created earlier, and then we will create the first subnet, which will be mstr-ip, and then we will tell him the range 192.168.1.0/24, and then we leave the default selections. As I said before, every option and everything you do in Azure, it will be for a cost, so you need to know the cost carefully, because this will affect your free Microsoft Azure credit, okay, credit limit. Anyway, we can see here a notification saying that it is deployment, or it is deploying your selections, or it is implementing your configuration or your steps. It's configuring and implementing your steps for creating your virtual network. So now we have our first virtual network created, and we have our first resource group created. So now the second step, or the next step, is to create. Here first of all we can see the activity log. Here is this activity log. Here you can see that it gives you a log or a place you can see what was done in your deployment. This is something like a log file, okay, what you have done. And this is also what I mean, that this is the log. This log contains what have been done in the deployment process, or implementing, or what we have done when we were creating our virtual network. And this is also, it is written in JSON or JSON language. This, you can take this text file and automate the process. So you can go to the log files and get the validate deployment, or register the deployment, or any one of the steps of the deployment, and take each JSON file to automate the process of it. Okay, for example, if you need to create, for example, to update resource group, you can go to the JSON language and take this text file or this written commands to, you can automate the process of the updating of the resource group. Anyway, this is a way also to check the logs, or check if your deployment is done correctly or not. Anyway, this will not, it's not for use for us right now. I'm just discovering the options, and here I can download the log file of the deployment and the automation process. I can download it as a CSV file. This is the deployment log, or the implementation or the creation of our virtual network steps. Anyway, it can be done here. You can see that it is exported in text file or in CSV file. Anyway, we can pass this real quickly. So now we can go to our resource group. Here we can see that we have our first resource group, and then in it we can see our first virtual network. We click on it, and then we can see, if we go to subnets, we can see our first created subnet. Here in all resources, you can go to resource group, or you can go to all resource group to go to, for example, here you can go to resource group and then choose your group and go to your virtual network, or you can choose all resources and go to your virtual network directly. Okay, here you can see this is my virtual network name, and this is the group that this virtual network is created in it, and then this is the location of all of these resource groups and virtual networks. It's in the UAE North data center, and this is my subscription. It's free trial. Anyway, we will go here to the second step for creating the first virtual network in this creating the first virtual machine in this virtual network. Here we can see that our subnets, it's 192.168.1.0/24, and then the address space, it is 192.168.0.0/26. This is the DNS servers. If you need, you will use the default Azure DNS servers. We will see this will come in handy when we create our first domain, not our first domain controller, our creating our first domain. This will come in handy, so take note of this. And this is how we can create Azure Active Directory, but we will not create an Active Directory now. This is also for my first attempts to discover the Microsoft Azure portal interface. Anyway, so now we will begin creating our first virtual machine in our first virtual network. we will see that I have encountered some problems. Here we can see, for example, in the network, virtual network, in something called diagram. Here is a little just a minute. Here we can see that if you go to the virtual network and click on it, there is something called diagram. It will give you a nice diagram of your virtual network. For example, when we create a virtual machine, it will be here in the diagram. We will create, and when we'll create a gateway, it will also be there. So it's a very nice diagram. You can export this topology, so you have a ready-made diagram for your network that contains your servers and your gateways and your switches and everything. Okay, so there is no switches here, but it will contain your gateways, your virtual machines, your subnets. Everything will be in this ready-made diagram. And when you click on it, it also gets you, for example, here I have clicked on my resource group or your virtual network. It will redirect you to the virtual, or would redirect you to the option that you have clicked on in the diagram. Anyway, so here I'm still discovering the here I'm just, don't bother yourself with this option because I still didn't succeed in using it yet, or I was discovering it yet. Anyway, so here we will go and create our virtual machine. This is the critical part. Here we will create our virtual. We go to the virtual machine and then create. We tell him add, and then what we will do here, we will tell him to create our virtual machine. Here is the process of creating your virtual machine. Here it will ask you where to put this virtual machine, where is the resource group that you want to put your virtual machine in. We will tell him to put it in our first resource group that we have created, and then it will ask you for the virtual machine name. Here is the good part. When you tell him your virtual machine will be named, for example, DC01 or whatsoever, the Windows PC name will be the same as your virtual machine name. So for example, if you have named your virtual machine PC DC01, when you install Windows or when you create your first virtual machine, you will go to the Windows and then right click this PC on your desktop. You can see that your computer name will be the same as your virtual machine name. So this is a good thing. In the Azure, this is not done when you are working with AWS or with Amazon interface. Okay, so this is one of the good things, that when you are working with the Azure portal or with the Azure cloud platform. Okay, so I name here my first domain controller to be DC Marble 01. Okay, and then he is asking you the region to put, or your data center to create your virtual machine in. And then this is I need to tell you all something here. Your virtual machine will have Windows installed or any operating system installed by default. Okay, so you will not see the process of the installation of the Windows. You will have a virtual machine that it is up and running and Windows is installed by default. You have an image of Windows, so you have your virtual machine, the Windows and everything is installed as an image. So Microsoft, for example, has a template, or have a workstation or a template virtual machine that has Windows installed on it, and then when you ask to create a virtual machine from any region or any place, it will take the virtual machine template that they have created and give it to you. So these are virtual machine templates that have Windows already installed on them. So you don't need to have a virtual machine and then insert a CD of Windows and then begin installation. No. As soon as you create the virtual machine and tell him to choose the image that you need, for example, if you use Windows 10, for example, or Windows Server, just tell him create. You will, after you finish creation of this virtual machine, you will power it on, and then you will find Windows already logged in and everything is okay. Okay, so here this is the virtual machine name. This is the region or the data center that you have your virtual machine will be created on. There is something called availability options. Here you are telling him that for example, if this domain controller on this region or this data center, okay, you need to tell him that I need this server to be in a redundant place. What we mean by redundant place? In the next step we will create another domain controller, okay, that will be the second domain controller. It will be second domain controller. It will be redundant for this first domain controller. So we need to have both domain controllers in the same data center region, okay. Why? For full redundancy, okay. But can the second domain controller, for example, be in another region? Of course it can be in a larger region. In a larger region, maybe not UAE, but there is a syncing between the two regions. For example, if we made the second domain controller in US, for example, and this availability options, we tell him to have region redundancy, so it will choose which data center is syncing, or what is the syncing partner with the UAE North region. For example, if we have the UAE North region is syncing its data with another region, so when we choose the availability option to choose the region of redundancy, it will automatically create the second domain controller to the syncing or syncing region partner to the UAE North region. For example, we have the UAE North data center is replicating its data with the US East data center, okay. So we have created our first domain controller on the UAE North, okay. So the second domain controller, if we choose this options region redundancy, it will create the second domain controller in the US East region, which is the partner, or which is the replication partner for the UAE North, okay. This is for the region option. But there is another thing called availability set, or region or set availability. What we mean by set availability, it will put the two domain controllers in the same region. So we have two options: to put the two domain controllers in the same data center, or we can put one domain controller in a region or a data center and the other in another region, and the two regions have replication between them, okay. So anyway, here we are choosing the here we can see that I will have an error. Here we can see that my subscription doesn't allow me to create virtual machines on the West US Central region data center. Here is telling me the supported locations that I can create virtual machines on. So your free Azure account limits you to create virtual machines on central data center or on certain data centers. So here I will choose for example US East, but here there is a problem. Even though I have choose a different region, okay, and I will tell him to create this virtual machine on this region, but the main resource group, it is created on UAE North data center. So this will make a problem. You need to make sure that your resource group and your virtual machine are created on the same region or the same data center, okay. So this will be a problem. I will show you all this problem, but now I have choose another region, or a region that I am permitted to create virtual machine on, and then I will tell him to install Windows Server 2019, and then when it will came, this is the image, or this is the Windows image that I will install. This is an image, it's not a Windows operating system installation, or it's not a normal Windows Server 2019 DVD. It is an image, a ready-made image. As soon as I power on the virtual machine, I will log into the Windows directly without any installation process. So here I will choose Windows Server 2019, and then I will choose my virtual machine specs, or the hardware specs. Here, for example, he is choosing for me a virtual machine with 2 CPUs and 8 GB of RAM, okay. So here this is much more than I need. I will only choose for 1 CPU and 1 GB of RAM, but this made problems for me. The best is to have 1 CPU and 3 GB of RAM of memory, or zettabyte of memory. But anyway, here we will choose the image. So here we will change Windows Server 2019 data center, and then this is the Windows. He had choose for me the specs of the virtual machine. Here you can tell him to change the size. Here it will give you a lot of options to choose from. So basically here the virtual machines are, or the hardware specs of the virtual machines are specified in certain groups. For example, what is the virtual machine groups are, or the virtual machines are created according to what you need from this virtual machine. For example, if you need a virtual machine that will work as a domain controller or something, so you can choose the category of virtual machine general purpose. For example, if you need to have a virtual machine that will act as a database server, then you need to choose another virtual machine category. So here is categorized virtual machines by purpose, or what you need, or what you will do with this virtual machine. For example, a virtual machine will be acting as a database server, then you need to choose it from general purpose to another type of virtual machines, okay, or virtual machine categories. If you need it for general purpose, for example, like acting as a domain controller, then you will choose this one. And here we will only need 1 gigabyte of one processor and 3.5 gigabyte of RAM. Okay, I think here I can pass it real quickly because need all of this. Anyway, so here we will choose it, 1 CPU, 1 gigabyte of RAM, and here is the local Windows 10. This is the local administrator account for the Windows Server 2019. As I said before, when you install Windows for the first time, there is already a default user created, which is called administrator. This is the local administrator for the Windows Server or Windows 10. This has full rights on the Windows 10 operating system or Windows Server operating system. So here is telling you what is your administrator account, so he can rename your local. As I said before, the Windows 10 or Windows Server creates a default account which is called administrator. This is called the local administrator, and it has full rights on the Windows operating system. So here your Azure platform gives you the option to change the administrator account from administrator to be any other thing. For example, if I need my default user administrator to be changed to Karim Raouf, it will be. So your local administrator will not be named administrator. You can name it to any other thing. So now I will name it K Raouf, and then we give it a password. Anyway, the password need also to be of a certain criteria. So now we have put our local administrator username and password, and then he is telling us to make some rules in the firewall. We all know that the Windows have a firewall, so here he is telling me to make some rules on the Windows 10 firewall. The allowed ports, here we will tell him, if we choose allow selected ports, we tell him to allow the remote desktop connection. Why? Because this is the first thing that we will use after creating our virtual machine. We will use our remote desktop application and connect to this virtual machine. So we need the firewall to allow the remote desktop ports to be enabled on this virtual machine firewall. So we will tell him to allow the ports, and then we will choose to have RDP, this is thing, and you can also tell him to allow SSH if you are using something like PuTTY or something, that tools that connect using SSH protocol. Okay, so this is the general setting for the virtual machine, and then we will choose the hard disk for this virtual machine. Here we have different types of hard disk. We have premium SSD, you have a normal SSD, you have a normal hard disk, a SATA hard disk, or a normal hard disk. So you can choose between different types of hard disks, but the more or the best the hard disk is, or the best type of the hard disk that you will use, the more that you will pay, or the more that you will be charged. Okay, so best practice, you can use a normal hard disk, not SSD. this is during the lab, it's fine, and it will not make any delay problems or not make any performance issues. But as for this, I am still discovering the options, but you can use the normal hard disk, and the performance will be good, and it is acceptable. So here we have a lot of hard disk. We have the standard SSD and the premium SSD and the standard HDD. Okay, so here I will choose a normal hard disk, and then this is also advanced options. I will leave everything. Just a moment. Here you will be given a hard disk, only one hard disk, and you will choose the type. Okay, I think it's maybe it will be I think 20 gigabyte or something, because this is the default one. Okay, and if you need to add more hard disk, you tell him to create and attach a new disk. Okay, and tell him the size that you need, okay, for this new hard disk. Okay, so this is also another good option. And then for the network, here comes the problem. Here you can see that, let me show you. Here, this is the virtual network, okay, that you have created. And then when you go to the subnet, you remember that our subnet was 192.168.1.0. Here we can see that there is a different subnet. Why is this? Because we have our resource group created in a region, and our virtual network is created, our resource group is created in a region, and our virtual machine is created on another region. So here he feels them that they are two different places, so he's giving you another subnet. So this is a problem. Okay, so I need to recreate. I will delete my resource group that was in UA, and then I will create another or a new resource group in United States, and then I will create my virtual network in the United States. By the way, the resource group and the virtual network both in UAE, okay, and my virtual network and my virtual machine is on the US, so I need to make them all in the same region. So here we can see a problem. This happens to me, and then we will leave everything as default. He is telling us that he will allow only the remote desktop connection to be used. So here we can see that this is a problem I have encountered. I need to go there and show you all what I have did. I have already tried to do a lot of things, but at the end it didn't succeed. I need to show you all how this will be done. Okay, anyway, so let's go here. So here now I will delete everything and begin from the start. I will delete my resource group in UAE, and will delete my virtual network in UAE, and then I will begin creating another new resource group. So here you can see I will create my virtual. But I think here I did something else. Just a minute. I think I need to. Just a minute. I need to show you all, because I think I have deleted the. Anyway. So here I will delete my virtual network, and then I will delete my resource group. Just a minute. So here I will create because my virtual network is on UAE and my resource group is in my UAE region. I will delete them all. Okay, and my virtual machine was in US, so this made a problem. So I need to make sure that all of them are in the same region. So here I'm telling him to delete my virtual network. He's telling me to confirm delete by typing yes. So here I have deleted my virtual network. Here you can see notification saying that it's executing the delete command. So now he has deleted my virtual network. So I will go to my resource group, and I need to delete both groups. Okay, this is the groups created by default. This I have created already. This is for the Marvel resource group, and this is created by default by Microsoft Azure. This is a group that he will put all of the logs file, or the network log setting, or the network logs will be in this place. Okay, that's what I think. Anyway, I will delete them both also. So here we will delete resource group. Okay, and tell him we need to type the name of the resource group, not type yes. To delete the resource group, he need to get the name of the resource group. And then we are seeing that it's giving us a notification that it is deleting the resource group. Anyway, so you need to make sure when you are creating your first resource group and your first virtual network and your first virtual machine, all of them to be in the same region, and this region should be permitted, or this region you should have a permission to create virtual machines on it. Okay, because there is some regions that you don't have this option to create a virtual machine according to your Microsoft free user account. As I said before, here I don't have option to create virtual machines on the UAE data center. Okay, so here I am also deleting the other network, the other resource group. So anyway, now we have deleted both resource groups, and then we will create again the resource groups in the correct region, the one recommended for us. We will create it in the recommended region by Microsoft Azure, which will be US East region data center, or Microsoft US East region data center. It will take a little bit of time. Anyway, so we'll go now and create. Here you can create the virtual network and resource group in one step. I will show you all how this is done. So you go to all resource or create a resource, and then check or search for virtual network and choose it, and then you will create your virtual network. You will name it the same, net01, and then we will choose the address space. Okay, 0.016, and then we can tell him here, by telling him create new, we can create the resource group from here. So we can create the resource group from creating the virtual network from here by creating new. Okay, and you will change the location, but just wait for a moment. Here we can pass it here quickly. Here we tell him create new, and then we'll tell him okay, so this is our first resource group, and then we'll choose the location of US East, and then we will create our first subnet, which will be 192. This is the subnet name. It's Marvel IP range. Then we will choose the range 192.168.1.0/24, and then everything is done. We need to tell him create. So now we have created the virtual network and the resource group in one step. So now it is being deployed, and then after that we will try to see if now we can create our first virtual machine and the virtual network and the virtual and the subnet will be correct this time. You will see that now in a moment. Here you can see that our resource groups are created. Okay, so now we go to the virtual machine, and then we will tell him to create a virtual machine. Now you can see that we will not find any problems. Here we will choose our resource group, which will be Marvel domain. Okay, and then we'll give it a name, DC Marvel. Then we will do the same that we have done before, and we have already explained, okay, what these options are. Here we will not change the region. Here we will change the region to US East. Okay, this is the one that we have used. And then we will tell him to choose the image of Windows Server 2019 data center. And here there is something called availability set. As I said before, we can go a little bit further. Sorry. So here we can see there is called availability zone and availability set. Availability zone means that there is a region and another region replicating their data between them. So when we create our first domain controller, for example in US East, we can create our second domain controller in another region that is replicating with this region. So this make it as availability option. This is availability zone. As for availability set, it will create the two domain controllers in the same data center or in the same region. Okay, so availability zone means that there are couple of zones, there is a couple of regions put in the same zone so they can replicate their data between them. As for availability set, it means that the two domain controllers will be on the same region or the same data center. Okay, anyway, we will not use this, and now we will choose the server data center 2019, and then we will change the size. Here this is my administrator account, and then we will allow the ports for the RDP, for remote desktop connection or remote desktop protocol. This is the RDP, is the protocol used by the program remote desktop connection to connect to the remote PC or remote workstation. This remote could be in the same network, or it could be on outside or on the internet, if it got or if it has an IP address, a public IP address. I will show you all that when we create our virtual machine. It will have an IP or a public IP address. Okay, anyway, now we will continue. Okay, here we can see that time our network range it's done correctly. It's 192.168.1.0. this is the one that we have already created, so all of the network settings are done correctly. And we leave everything as a default. I think we can go a little bit further anyway. Just a minute. Okay, now just a minute, another thing here again. So now we will go to the management section. Another thing in the setting for this virtual machine is telling us during the boot, because this virtual machine will have a normal operating system booting. So if you have problems with this virtual machine, you can tell him to open the boot diagnostic tools, so it can diagnose the booting process for you. I will use this in a video because I had some problems with the virtual machine, so I use this boot diagnostic tools to see what is the problem with my booting process or the problem with my virtual machine. Okay, and you also can have another option for OS operating system guest diagnostic tool, but as I said before, every option you use, it will be for a charge. Okay, and here is another thing, diagnostic storage account. Here all of the data concerning the diagnostic, if there is any logs or if there is anything, there is a space on Microsoft or something called storage account, something like Drive, Google Gmail, Google Drive or something, it will store these logs and this data on this storage account or storage space, and it is named according to the network, my virtual network. This is created automatically for me. Okay, so here we tell him next. Actually every one of these options we should discuss it later, but we are doing the basic configuration steps. We will go to every option one by one. Here for example we can see that it's telling us auto shutdown. It will auto shut down. You can tell him to auto shut down the virtual machine after a certain period of time, and you can tell him to back up this virtual machine as a whole. But as I said before, all of these options are with a price. Okay, so you need to make sure, but this is also a good option for availability, so you need to have a backup of your most important virtual machines. For example, our domain controller, you should have always a backup of it. But if you have two domain controllers, so this will not be an issue anyway. So you have these options, as I said before, to use it, but every option you use, it comes with a price. Anyway, so now we will continue, and here we can see that you can install something to this virtual machine operating system. So you can, for example, add Microsoft anti-malware software, you can add Acronis backup, you can add a lot of programs. Okay, so this is another option. When you create your virtual machine, you can add any software automatically to this virtual machine operating system. So this is not much, but I think by time there will be a lot of programs you can add, and these programs are added automatically. And this is the generation of the virtual machine. This, you see this option in Hyper-V. This is also Gen 1 and Gen 2. Gen 2 supports UEFI based boot systems, but it needs increased memory and operating system, or it needs disk size also more. Okay, anyway, so we tell him next, and then create and review, and then it tells us that this virtual machine with all the setting that you have choose, it will cost you less than 1 cent, maybe. I don't know if this is the dime or not, but it's $0.01 US per hour. Okay, so this is very good option, because you know how much this will cost you. And actually as long as the virtual machine is powered on, it will begin counting on you. Okay, this is another thing. For example, if you open your virtual machine and leave it up for whatever time, it will begin calculating the rate, or it will begin calculate your consumption based on how much you left this virtual machine up and running. But if you powered it off, it will stop counting, or stop limiting your credit or decreasing your credit. But there is another side. For example, if you are using a hard disk, or for example you are using a public IP address, because the public IP address that goes to the internet costs. So even if you power on the virtual machine or not, and still reserving an IP or public IP address for this virtual machine, this will be billed to your bill, even though if the power machine is off or on. It is costing you, because it is reserving an IP address or a public IP address for you. So even if you use this a public IP address or not, it is reserved for you, and you will pay for it. So just also, this is another thing to take note. But this we will know it when you work with Microsoft Azure. So we need to make sure that you are always, I will show you a way that you can create a virtual machine and use a private IP address. This will not cost you, but this is in another video. But anyway, this is the summary for what you have done or what you have created. And then we tell him create. and then it will take a little bit of time. As we see here, we don't have any errors. Okay, so here we are waiting for our creating of our virtual machine, or our first virtual machine. After the deployment is finished, you can tell him to download the deployment details. This is a log file, and you can also download a script for automating the process of the deployment. Okay, the same when you are creating or you are set up or configuring your first or your Active Directory, you can export a PowerShell script to automate the process of the activation and the configuration of the Active Directory. The same here, when you finish the deployment, you can export, or you can get a file that is something like a script. You can automate the process of the creation and the configuration of the virtual machine on the Microsoft Azure cloud. Okay, so here it's finished. Tell him to download the deployment. This contains two files. These two files are scripts you can use to automate the process of the creation of the Microsoft Azure virtual machine. Okay, anyway, we will see you all. I will show you all what contains this. It's downloaded as a zip file, and then you can see that here we can see that the deployment here is two files, Johnson or JSON. I think it's not named Johnson. Anyway, it's JSON. This file, you can use it to automate the process. So here we can go to our first virtual machine. Here we can see it is already started for us, and here is the different information about the virtual machine: the hard disk, the network cards, the size, the security, the activity log for the virtual machine. Everything concerns this virtual machine. Here is the virtual machine name. So now we will click on the virtual machine, and here we can see that the virtual machine is giving a public IP address. So using this IP address, you are paying for working with a public IP address, and either you open the virtual machine or not, you will be charged for using this public IP address. So you can use this public IP address and open your remote desktop connection and connect to this virtual machine using this public IP address. But another note, when you open or you power on and power off the virtual machine, this public IP address changes. It's not fixed. So this is another problem when you are working with public IP addresses. But I will show you how we can use the private IP address, and we can use a VPN connection to connect to this virtual machine using the private IP address. Anyway, I will show you all. This is in another video, but this is also to take note. Here we can see that there is some changes, or we can see there is some things when we log in on the Windows for the first time. We can see that the computer name will be named the same as the virtual machine name. So this is another thing. So now we can access the here we are accessing our first virtual machine remotely using the remote desktop connection. When we open, here we are using, this is the local administrator, it's Keraof. So it's not named administrator, it is renamed to Keraof. This is not the default administrator or the default user account created when Windows is installed. It is named by default administrator, but when you were configuring the virtual machine, you told him to change it from administrator to Keraof. So now we will see that the computer name is named differently, or it's named according to the virtual machine name. So this is very good. Okay, it's one of the steps. This is not done through using the AWS. I have already worked with AWS. It's not, its interface is not like the ease of the interface of the Microsoft, but it is more secure and have more options. But Microsoft is on the way, or it is on the track. It is adding more options day by day. It's getting a part of the market. Anyway, here we can see that first of all, we need, here is getting network. By the way, this machine is getting to the internet. Okay, so there is internet connection. Okay, so you don't have to install a firewall, install something, or it's already getting this virtual machine to the internet by default. So you don't need to bother yourself with the internet connection. You are already through this virtual machine out to the internet. Here the local server, here we can see that our computer name, it's DC Marvel. It is the same name that we have put in the configuration, or this is the same name of the virtual machine name. And we can see here that the remote management is enabled by default and the remote desktop is enabled by default. Here the only thing that we need to configure is the IP address, and this product is already activated. It is giving a license by Microsoft, and this is 1 GB of RAM and total space of, we will see the hard disk now. Here we can see that Microsoft have given us, or giving this virtual machine, we have two types of hard disks. Okay, just a minute. Here we can see that this is the C. It's giving the hard disk of this virtual machine to be 126 GB, and it's giving, this is a fixed hard disk that will not go. And there is another storage called temporary storage. This is storage given to virtual machine, but it can be taken from it anytime. So this is a temporary storage. You can use it, okay, but don't depend on it. So don't put any critical data on this temporary storage, because this storage can be taken from you and used in any other virtual machine. So this is a temporary storage. You can use put all the data you need on this device or this hard disk. Anyway, so this is our virtual machine, and this is our first attempt to create a virtual machine and the name. So we'll begin after that, after discovering most of the options, or the most critical options for this virtual machine. We will shut down. Here, by telling him to shut down, we are telling him to shut down the operating system, not the virtual machine. This is another thing. When you are working with the Hyper-V, shutting down the operating system means shutting down the virtual machine, but this is not the case here. You need, when you shut down the operating system in the Microsoft virtual Azure machine, you need to tell him to not only shut down from the operating system, but to shut down from here, to tell him to stop the virtual machine. So we will check it and then tell him to stop. So this is our first attempt to work with the Microsoft Azure platform, and then the upcoming videos we will begin creating more virtual machines and begin to control, or to begin working more or discovering more of the Microsoft Azure platform. So hope this video was informative for you all, and I would like you all to thank you for viewing. I would like to thank you all for viewing. Thank you so much.